Hi, this is Brett Swarts. I'm excited to be on Scott Carson's show right now, and we're going to be talking about Biden potential tax changes as regards to the 1031 exchange and ways that you can prepare so that you're not caught off guard. We're going to talk about the deferred sales trust, opportunity zones, and really just ways that you can create and preserve more wealth without having to do a 1031 exchange. Check out all the secrets right now.
This is the Note Closer Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, Scott Carson, excited to be here with you today. And excited to bring back a previous guest on the show here. This guy's doing amazing things. You may have heard him speak at Note Camp commercial a while back, or also one of the Note Closer Show podcasts, or even Note Night in America. We had him on a while back talking about that. But with everything going on in the election and all the proposed estimated tax changes that the new president is probably going to do, I think it was relevant to bring our buddy Brett Swarts back on from the Capital Gains Tax Solution podcast. What's going on, Brett? How's it going out in Sacramento today?
Hey, Scott. It's going fine. You know, it's nice and sunny. It's a little bit cooler. We're officially kind of into the fall season or winter season, if you will, and it's but it's good. It's good. We're still here in California trying to figure out taxes, right, and trying to figure out ways to stay creative and stay legal. And so, we're doing fine.
Good stuff there. So why don't we dive right into it a little bit here for you? Let's start, kind of breaking down some of the biggest changes. And let's start first with what's, I think, going to impact you guys the most there is proposed, talking about doing away with 1031 exchanges. And before we dive into kind of the change, let's talk a little bit about what a 1031 exchange is for those that are listening and kind of go from there. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds great. So a 1031 exchange is a way to defer capital gains tax when you sell a highly appreciated investment real estate and in order to go buy another one. And so it's just trading basically real estate for real estate as long as it's investment. There's some rules behind it, and such as you got to do it within 180 days from the time you sell, you got to purchase the next one. And you typically have to identify within 45 days the properties you're going to buy. So a lot of folks will choose an accommodator, get that set up beforehand, go to sell their asset, and the funds will just go to that accommodator, and that keeps it from you, the taxpayer, from taking it into your hands. Therefore, it remains in a tax deferral state. And then from the accommodator, you go buy another property. So it's very well known, and it's a great strategy. And it's a great way to keep people incentivized to actually move assets, right? To take, let's say, a 50-unit apartment complex and then upgrade to like 100 units, and then renovate those and create more jobs. And it's actually part of the greater general study of macroeconomics, which if we can keep the funds flowing, we actually create more jobs, spur more economic growth, and in turn, more tax revenue actually comes. And that's why it's lasted for so long. In fact, 1031s go back kind of the 1920s. There was a big Starker exchange case kind of in the 50s that changed some things, and another case kind of in the 80s that clarified some things. But they become very popular. I mean, if you're in real estate and you're investing, a 1031, and we're hoping though it definitely stays around here.
So if it is taken away, what do you see to being the impact? You obviously think more people will be going to the deferred sales trusts that you guys work with, or what? How's that going to work out?
Yeah, so the first thing I think you'll see more people do if this happens is they'll do what I like to call the hold and refi scenario and buy, because in a refinance, it's not taxable. In fact, when I started Marcus & Millichap in 2008, one of the things I found for the folks who did the best was they didn't take on too much debt and they never sold. Right? They may not have gone as fast as some of the others, but they also didn't take on as much risk. So what they would do is they'd either buy something all cash, or they'd buy something on leverage, build it up, and then refinance, but only refinance up to 50%, just so they have that extra cushion. They wouldn't over leverage in case the market shifted. And so they would just accumulate assets. Think of it like a monopoly board where you're just going to buy assets and then you're just going to be careful not to over leverage. So I thought this was interesting. So I think a lot of folks will do that. They'll just hold on to what they have, right? It'll stifle the brokerage business some, right? It'll stifle sellers from selling, right? And it'll have even less inventory for people to buy, because people are going to be less incentivized to sell because they don't want to pay the 30 to 50% in capital gains tax. And this is also something to understand. Depending on what state you live in and where you're at, it's 20% federal. California is like 13.3% state. Obamacare is about 3.8%. And then you add depreciation recapture on that, and then you have somewhere between 30 and 50%. Some other states might be a little bit lower, but that's what's hurting people. That gain would be taxed, and therefore, if you can't defer it, why would you sell it, right? And that's where, even if you think about it, like if people own stocks, you cannot 1031 stocks, you cannot 1031 primary homes, or even businesses for that matter. So that actually stifles people from selling because they can't defer the tax. So unfortunately, that I think would be the biggest impact. People won't sell, and then they'll refinance, and then we can talk about other alternatives now if you'd like as well.
That'd be great. Let's talk about those. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next thing would be looking at what else could someone do, right? And as of this point, you have, which is a nice thing called an opportunity zone, where you can actually park funds upon a sale, and it's similar in the timing for the 1031. You got to place within 180 days those funds. So let's say you sold a $5 million appreciated property and you had $1.5 million of taxable gain. You have the ability just to put the gain into this opportunity zone, okay? And as a part of that, you can defer it for a number of years, and then hit to pay it back. But then you also have the chance to get some tax-free growth. But it also depends if they extend that as well, because it does take 10 years to do that. So that will become more popular. The second one would be maybe something like a charitable remainder trust, where you can start to give some of this stuff away to charity. And the one that we're most excited about and what we specialize in is what's called the Deferred Sales Trust. And we think it's kind of the best of both worlds, and because it gives you the chance to just sit on the sidelines and not have to pay tax or defer the tax, and then go back into real estate whenever you want to. And so one of the best stories to illustrate this is in 2006, a gentleman sold a $20 million asset in Minnesota, and he parked it on the sidelines into the Deferred Sales Trust because he couldn't find a suitable 1031. So the 1031 has been available, but just the prices were too high. 5 years later, he bought back that same property that he sold at 60 cents on the dollar. And the way he was able to do it is through his trust. It's kind of like a self-directed IRA. It's kind of like parking it in like a 401k, if you will. And then you can use the 401k or the SEP IRA to partner with you to buy that deal, except there's none of the rules for that. So it's IRC 453, if people are wondering, which is separate from IRC 1031. So those are tax codes. Right. So what Biden is proposing is to eliminate the 1031 exchange, which is IRC 1031 versus IRC 453. And so we think that if the 1031 was taken away, business will skyrocket for the Deferred Sales Trust or other alternatives like the Opportunity Zones, because right now the 1031 is probably the most dominant out of all of those, the most well-known that most people use.
Now, is there an amount, as far as an investment amount, a taxable amount or sales amount that people need to be aware of that's probably affected more, so that would qualify better for the Opportunity Zone or more for the Deferred Sales Trust?
Great question. So the minimums. So we found right now our new minimums, given the level of business we've done, is 1 million net equity into the Deferred Sales Trust, and somewhere around 250 to 300,000 or so of liability deferred. So if you have those numbers, then the Deferred Sales Trust we think is a good fit. Opportunity zones can always be a good fit, or even a hedge. You can do it. You can do a partial opportunity zone and a partial Deferred Sales Trust to diversify. We've had some clients that are doing that. It really just depends on what the needs and the goals are of the client. So one of the areas that we found is if you're a baby boomer and you're part of the $17 trillion that's going to pass in the next 20 years, it's part of the largest wealth accumulation and transfer in the history of the planet. That's happening. In fact, there's about 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day in the U.S. and about 77 million. This is all according to a survey the American Bankers Association did. So if you're a baby boomer, your needs and your wants might be a little bit different than if you're younger. Okay, and so we found that a lot of them don't want the toilets, the trash, the liability, and they actually want time, travel, liquidity, and diversification. So the Deferred Sales Trust is a nice fit for that client who's looking for some options there, and the ability to access the cash and spend it if they want to, pay the tax, of course, and or go into deals of their own if they ever want to, or never have to go into a real estate deal ever again, or even go like with Scott and invest into some alternatives, right? Do some hard money lending. In fact, we had a client who just put $2 million with a previous lender that he had worked with as a way to hedge against the real estate values that were so high. And he's liking that scenario. So this is all through the Deferred Sales Trust. So that is available as well. Now, if you're younger and you still want to do deals, right, or you found a nice opportunity zone deal, then by all means, go for that. And perhaps you don't need the liquidity. You can really just let it be tied up for maybe 10 years, and that's maybe it could be a good fit. So all just kind of depends on what you're looking for. Of course, I'll also mention the Deferred Sales Trust works for primary homes. We just did an $8.3 million deal in Palo Alto. There was a $45 million primary home deal closed in Montecito. It works for dentists, optometrists, or any veterinarians, whereas a 1031 does not work for a primary home, right? And 1031 does not work for a business. Now, an opportunity zone does. That's just nice. You can use that for those other sales of those other assets. So again, just clarifying what you want, what you need, and then executing that strategy.
Can you explain the opportunity zones and kind of where they're located at, and what are you seeing in those areas?
Yeah, so the opportunity zones was something that the government did. This is part of the Trump tax plan a few years ago, where it's a bipartisan effort actually, which was one of the few that kind of had wide support,
right,
on both sides. And basically, what they did is said, how do we take capital that's tied up in these highly appreciated assets? It could be stock, it could be businesses, it could be real estate, let's just say, and how do we redeploy that and incentivize people to sell and put it into areas that perhaps are underserved or have kind of been maybe ignored a little bit, and try to revitalize communities. And so it's to what I've gathered, it's been successful, very successful for doing exactly what it was intended to do. But just they have a map, and they got with the states, and the states basically identified certain parts of different cities. And so you can go look up an opportunity zone map and then kind of see that. Now, so if you want to invest, we always encourage you, just don't go out and just shotgun shoot this. Make sure you're working with somebody who's already A, been in real estate, B, has already owned or identified properties, right? And then C, if it happens to be an opportunity zone, great. But you never want to let the tax tail wag the investment dog. So just be careful too, because some of the values have jumped because it's opportunity zone. They've already been factored in, so that savings may not even really be there now. So just make sure you're underwriting. Right now, it's more important than ever to underwrite, understand values of real estate. Inventory is low, prices are all-time high, and we think that values will shift. Whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, there's going to be opportunities for lower values. So, but if you find a deal, great, put it in there with that experienced operator, right? And become a partial investor and buy those deals. We have some deals actually in Texas. We have one in San Antonio that I work with a proven operator that I like, and you can find those if you search hard enough. But just be careful that you're not overpaying.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, because I think we're going to see a reduction in especially a lot of commercial deals here in the next few months, once we figure out what's going to happen with all of the eviction and foreclosure restrictions being lifted and are expiring, or if they get extended, who knows what's going to happen, right? Now, what other issues of the proposed tax plan kind of jump up at you as things that people really need to watch out for?
Oh man, just the increases in taxes, right? So if you just go through, it's obviously a very different approach. There's more regulation, there's more taxes, and there's more spending. Although Trump also spent a lot of money, but he also grew the economy pretty good, it seemed like, from what I've gathered. And so there's just a lot of changes, and COVID-19 is still unknown with what might happen with shutdowns again. But it's now more than ever more important to pre-plan, and have a plan A, B, and C. Yeah. So you've got to do your homework. You've got to get with professionals. What I like about our team, the Deferred Sales Trust, is we just take all the pressure off and say, hey, we're not going to charge you anything unless you do the deal. And we'll give you the pros and cons of each strategy, and then you decide what you want to do. One thing to mention too, though, for the 1031, which is interesting with the DST, if they take away the 1031, part of it is a household income. If it's greater than $400,000, then it eliminates. But if your household is below that, then you can still use it. So realize that there are some if you're below. So the key is, how do I stay below that 400 mark, right?
Right.
And so part of the Deferred Sales Trust, what's unique about it is you can sell an asset, move it into the DST, and then you can decide to keep that cash flow pouring on top of itself. So think of it like putting it into an IRA, and you're not taking any income from that IRA. You're letting it just grow, tax deferred, and all of the income is just compounding. Same thing with the deferred sales trust. So let's say, Scott, there was someone out there who made $500,000 a year, right? They're like, oh, I don't qualify, but they have an asset they're going to sell, and that particular asset is producing $150,000 per year. They could sell that asset, move into the deferred sales trust, and all of that new cash flow could just pour into it. And guess what their ordinary income does? Well, we just dropped it by 150. Now they're at 350. They're below that 400 mark.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some creative ways to put these different strategies together. The key would be, how do we lower your overall AGI in order for you to qualify for maybe what you want to do, which is that 1031. So there's going to be a lot of talks about those kind of things. But of course, we don't know. The biggest thing is Georgia, right? At this point, whether the Senate will go stick with the Republicans or go with the Democrats. And then at that point, even still, it might take some time for these 1031 to go through. So I doubt we'll see any major change for 6, 12, maybe even 24 months, but it's always good to prepare.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that stands out the most too is proposed changes to the long-term capital gains taxes too, looking to increase those from, was it 24% right now, up to roughly 43% in a lot of cases, which is, that definitely means you need to be planning on when you look to exit or keep it, hold on to it for a while too, right?
Yeah, we get that all the time. People are like, well, should I just sell now and just pay the tax? We're like, whoa, slow down. Like, whether it's 23
don't get excited
40,
now. Yeah,
whether it's 23 or 40, don't get excited about paying 23, right? I go, and it's the rule of 72, which states we can earn 7% on any given amount over any 10-year period. We can double that amount. So let's take a scenario. I'll say it's a $5 million asset. You had a $1 million basis. You had a $4 million gain. It's about a $1.5 million liability as it stands today, maybe about 33% or so, right?
Yep.
Okay, so even if it was a little bit lower, like it's still $1 million of tax. Let's say that's substantial. Why don't we just keep it deferred? And we define losing as paying the tax is gone forever. We define winning as paying the tax or deferring the tax, right? And so we want to defer it. So whether it's 23 or 40, let's keep that wealth in your estate. Let's keep that wealth in with your family. Let's grow it. Now live off the income as you like to receive it, right? Or the other side of it is this, which some people just completely forget about, and it's the estate tax.
Yeah.
Right? Which is 40% of anything if you're worth 22 million married and 12 million single. And those are set to expire in 2025. And given where the presidency is going, we probably think that will expire, and they'll drop that to 12 married, 6 million single. Okay, so let's do the math there. If you're worth 52 million and you're married, and all 52 is inside your taxable estate, you're looking at, with the 30 million left inside of the exemption, 22 minus 52, that's $12 million, 40% on that amount. So the intent is to get it outside your taxable estate. The challenge is you can't get it out fast enough. Now, this is where the deferred sales trust is pretty amazing. In one single deal, we could sell, let's say, a $30 million asset and move it all outside the taxable estate, saving that 40%. Again, saving that 40% versus paying that away has nothing to do with the stepped up basis. So these are all the type of capital gains tax, estate tax you want to be prepared for, you want to be, working on, so that you're not caught off guard and so that you're not paying more tax than you legally want or need to.
Yeah, that's a big thing. The death tax, as they call it. That can be a lot of people hurting there in a lot of phases, paying a lot of taxes. They don't know the options that are available to them. Another thing that jumps out to me is the QBI. They're looking to phase that out, the qualified business income deduction. Moving that, doing away with that over time. That can add a lot of people, especially those that are making over $400,000 a year too, right?
All of the above, right? It's pretty brutal to actually think about where we're going here and what it's going to mean, and for business owners, for higher income earners, for those who want to grow businesses, right, and create more jobs. It'll be an interesting shift, for sure. It seems like it's going to be Biden, given everything we know today. And so we'll see how the next 4 years shakes out. But in the meantime, we just focus on what we can control, what is legal, what is available, and making sure we're taking advantage of each of those things to help our clients and partners and friends create and preserve more wealth.
Well, that's the biggest thing. We all want to do big things out there. So many people are looking to do big things, but I really believe we're going to see a lot of opportunity here, not only on the residential note side, especially distressed debt, but a lot on the commercial side of things, of being able to pick up an asset. I'll give you an example. Hotels right now are going like at 20, 25 cents of what's owed. That's what we see they're trading at. And there's a lot of opportunity buying a $4 million hotel for $1 million and then working it out to either take the property back or work with that stuff. And that's all these things are something that people need to keep in mind on what their final exit strategy is going to be. Do we sell it? We foreclose on it and try to sell it at the auction, or look to take it back and hold on to it for a while. And there's a lot of moving parts to what the next few years hold for everybody, right?
Absolutely. Yes. So many moving parts. And I've even seen since the election, when that happened, a mass exodus. Our deals have just spiked because people are now trying to figure out exactly what they're doing before the big changes happen. So yeah, well, it's going to be an interesting 24 months for sure, and definitely an interesting 12 months on the first 2021 here.
Is there anything else about the tax plan that kind of jumps out at you?
Nothing that we haven't already touched so far. And again, let's see what changes are made and when, and then let's execute on pivot on that plan. So.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If it's a divided House and Senate, it's going to drag things out and drag changes being made, for sure. But it's definitely interested to start preparing, start reading, start researching, and putting proper plans in place to take advantage of tax savings any way you can, one way or another, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're here for.
What is any big surprises that have popped up with just in the last few months with some of your clients or people reaching out to you a little bit more so?
Yeah, we're getting an increase in folks who are looking to sell cryptocurrency, which it's actually made a little run here. So the Deferred Sales Trust works for that. We've had an increase in a lot of mergers and acquisitions for some large business sales, and folks, especially have multiple partners in a sale, and they're all looking to have their own Deferred Sales Trust, which is nice. So I would say that's also boosted. We've saved probably 8 or 9 failed 1031 exchanges in the past several months. So low inventory, financing becoming more challenging with some banks. They're tightening up their requirements. So in general, we've just seen a surge of new business for us because people, again, want liquidity, diversification, and they want freedom, either with the income that comes in or to freeze it if they don't want it to come in. So I just would say we're just becoming more and more popular, more and more mainstream as we close more deals. So not new to us, but I think it's new to a lot of other folks. Yeah. It's really, the Deferred Sales Trust is really gaining a whole lot of momentum. I've also seen some pivoting. Also, this is interesting, Scott. I'm in the commercial real estate brokerage world, right? Yeah. And that's when I started out. And I'm seeing a pivot there as well. And for our listeners who are listening, if you're in the commercial real estate brokerage world, or even the residential world for that matter, I recently aligned with and hung my broker's license under a group called EXP Commercial. And they're using a model which is really fascinating, where instead of just paying the big box corporate store who has a lot of expense, they're taking that savings, they're moving it into the cloud. And COVID-19, a lot of people are working from home or home offices, right? And they're saying, how do we do training online? How do we collaborate online? And that stock, Scott, if you haven't seen it, is skyrocketed. It went from about $8 just a couple of years ago. And I think it's up to $60 now, or it went up to 60. Now it's at 50 right now. And they're 40,000 agents. And now they're taking, that was on the residential side. So most people have heard of it on that, but now it's on the commercial side. And the commercial side, for the longest time, has been an old model. And the old model has been one of non-innovation per se, right? Whereas residential in general has been more innovative. And so they did that, and a lot of people said it won't work, but it's absolutely working. It's skyrocketing. So now they're taking it to the commercial. So they formed a whole new kind of separate, but underneath one umbrella, new leadership. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this might be the most exciting thing for commercial real estate brokers, to get on the other side of the phone without having to own real estate, but by just training and closing deals like they've always done, and get that what's called revenue share. So it's pretty transformational. So I'm curious to see, not only with like the Biden tax plan or the changing of certain things, but also how it affects different industries, even like the note business, right? Or owning real estate, or how it's owned. We're just in probably a season or two of change and pivoting. And how are you going to be in front of that? And how are you going to position yourself and your family to earn a lot of wealth, right? And how are you going to forever change the industry? So that, I'd say, is kind of the biggest thing that I'm looking at and seeing and trying to get my hands around.
I do agree that any type of those platforms that have old business, and I think a lot of the commercial brokers is the old way of doing things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's got to shake it up to go more that cloud-based, that virtual learning experience. And when you remove the brick and mortar aspect of a business, you do remove a lot of costs and a lot of overhead that can be, passed on to your clients or passed on to your staff in a variety of ways. In this case, other realtors, other CCIMs and things like that too.
Exactly right. And I think it's going to flip upside down and it's going to just explode. And so I'm just excited to train and coach. And so we actually launching a second podcast, Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets Podcast. And we're going to bring in on brokers, we're going to bring on lenders, and it's going to be focused on the top in the industry and then looking at the model and dissecting the journey here as I've transitioned myself and my team, and then bringing on those who've also done the same to see how this works. So that you can also, it's a little plug there. You can check that out as well if you like.
Oh, I'm glad you brought it up because that was on my list to ask you about. I saw it pop up the other day. Kudos to you, man. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah.
Are any of your teammates or any of your fellow commercial realtors starting to see a lot of phone calls or feelers from the different banks and lending institutions out there about some of the market, the asset class, or potential REOs or pricing? I've got a couple buddies that are in the appraisal and inspection area, and they've been very busy in the last quarter with a lot of banks reaching out to them to pull valuations on properties that they haven't foreclosed on yet, haven't started it with everything being crazy like it is.
Yeah, so generally, yes, in that the banks are tightening up their requirements and they're underwriting their current deals and they're pulling back. And it was also interesting too, Wells Fargo personally recently they said, hey, you haven't used your credit line I had there personally. And they just sent out a letter saying, hey, you close your credit line. I'm like, that's interesting. So banks are closing credit lines on folks. They're pulling back, they're preparing, right? And as you see these things happen, it could be a sign for what's going to be coming here. So absolutely that's happening. And you want to be cautious more than ever. Get out of debt, get liquidity, right? Preserve your wealth right now. Stack up your cash is what I like to say. Again, that's why we love the deferred sales trust, because it's the one thing where you don't have to pay equal or greater value or exchange and overpay for property. You can just pay off all your debt, move it into the deferred sales trust, and just sit there ready to go and go into some alternatives like investing in notes, investing into stocks and bonds, and then also buying real estate, but in smaller chunks, right? And versus one big chunk in just one property, one location with all this debt. Don't do what happened in 2008 all over again, right? We already knew that story. Not that I think, it's going to happen, Scott, like it did, but still, like if you're looking at your net worth, regardless of what age you are, realize that liquidity and time is your friend, and being out of debt is your friend right now. And be patient. I like to say, wait for a deal to hit you over the head, and when it does, you can strike with the deferred sales trust, all tax deferred, and it's a lot of fun to do it that way.
Amen to that. I love it. Bro, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you to find more about what you're doing and see if it's a fit for what their future sales, retirement, and tax plan is all about?
Excellent. So 2 websites. So the first one would be capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's that's the main deferred sales trust education there, right? You can get a free ebook, 9 steps, or sell your real estate or business smarter in 9 steps. Okay, free ebook, get that right away. The second one would be if you're a professional and want to offer the deferred sales trust, you can go to experttaxsecrets.com. That's experttaxsecrets.com. And the last one, I guess there's 3, would be expertcresecrets.com, and that's all has to do with the brokerage industry and looking how to underwrite the model, taking your pride out of the way, underwriting the model to see if it's a good fit to join eXp Commercial and study that journey. So those are the 3 places.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, Brett, thanks so much for coming on the No Close Show, sharing your insight to the proposed tax changes and everything that's going on in this crazy market we call 2020, right, brother?
Appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Guys and gals, go out, take him up on his information, check it out. The more educated you are, the more knowledgeable you are about the opportunities and the changes. And we all can't change things. We all know there's a couple of things that are guaranteed: death and taxes. And as the tax rate change, you have to find workarounds and solutions to what may not be working or may not be available anymore. So I've never, ever regretted paying for good tax and legal advice out there. So go out, take some action, everybody, and check out what Brett is doing. And we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye.